With that, looks like the stage is set, and even our speakers are set, who are all ready online. But first up, let me invite our session moderator to spearhead the session. We have with us Mr. Ganeshan, VP, Senior Partner and Distribution Sector Leader, India, South Asia, IBM Consulting. So we have Mr. Ganeshan, VP, who will be spearheading this session for us. And joining him live in person over here, we also have with us Nitin Prasad, Chairman, Shell Companies in India, and Mr. L.V. Vaidyanathan, Chief Executive Officer, P&G India Subcontinent. And that being said, it's also time to invite our speakers who are joining us live virtually. We have with us none other than Preeta Reddy, Vice Chairperson, Apollo Hospitals, Vikram Kirloskar, Vice Chairman, Toyota Kirloskar Motor, Chairman and Managing Director, Kirloskar Systems, and none other than Mr. Jamshed Godrej, Chairman and Managing Director, Godrej and Boys. So let's have our speakers as well joining in online. Let's have them on the screen. And first up, can we have a round of applause to welcome all our speakers who have joined us here online and in person. And without any delay, I'm going to quickly hand it over to Mr. Ganeshan. Over to you, sir.
It's working? Okay. Good morning to you all. Thank you for making time today. And I want to thank my fellow panelists as well. We have industry leaders, thought leaders, the business leaders who are here to share their perspectives. We could have asked for a better panel than the one we have now. So thank you everyone for making time for this. So Sustainable Development Goals has been in existence since 2015. It's a set of objectives to be achieved by 2030. It is for all the nations and the government. So there are 17 of them. They're categorized across environmental, social, and economic categories. So the idea is you meet the environmental objectives, social objectives, and through that, you achieve economic objectives, right? So by being good, by being equitable, developing better human relations, fostering diversity and inclusion, and emitting less carbon, you become you create economic value. You become more profitable, right? So that is in the middle of the transformation agenda. When you talk about transformation, you want to achieve better profits. You want to transform your business, simplify your business, improve revenues, and so on. So the way these SDGs are designed seems to be in those lines. We also have ESG, which stands for environmental, social, and governance objectives. These are a set of criteria that investors use to decide on where they're going to invest, right? So as it stands, the ESG investment, the funds and the investment that's gone in so far is topping $30 trillion globally. So which is a lot of money. So I'm wondering, what's the reason for so much money getting into this sustainability area? So like you, I was also wondering, what's driving so much craze around sustainability now? So since we have the eminent panelists with us, I thought I will ask them. So I will go across to Mr. Prasad. Mr. Prasad, what is driving the focus on sustainability now? And I just wanted to understand the why part of it. Is it that we are transforming and delivering better business results through this? Or is it more because of COVID, or what has changed now?
Yeah, I think, so just in terms of context, the climate agenda, like you rightly said, has actually been around for a very long period of time. But what has happened over the last couple of years is actually a confluence of 3 or 4 different sort of events and factors. Number one, on the demand side, I think there is a greater level of awareness and understanding about what the implications of our consumer level choices actually mean, and the impact that it is having on the climate and the environment around us. And in that context, COVID may have given us a little bit of a window as to what that looks like, because once we shut down everything, it's only then we saw the climate response back and the natural response back, which of course we all had pictures flying around about how the nature has responded backwards. And I think that awareness has continued to grow. So that's the first sort of factor that's there. I think the second factor that's quite important is that the technological process that has occurred over the last, couple of decades has allowed for credible alternatives to be developed and economical alternatives to be developed, much in the way that renewable energy really in the last 5 or 6 years has come down the price curve to a point where it is a clear alternative and a economically beneficial alternative to our choices. But equally, the technology has helped us with climate models, so we have a better view as to the implications of our decisions, and we understand the impact we're having, as well as the ability to create new business models and structures so that we can actually accelerate the energy transition and to manage the climate. So that's the second thing, the rate of change of technology. But the third thing, and this is probably the one I would emphasize even more, is that there is, of course, now a tremendous social and moral obligation for us to, and an urgency for us to do something about the climate impact. I mean, if you've gone through the IPCC report, it clearly talks about the carbon cost, and every year the fact that our emissions are continuing to increase and not decrease, while the intensity, of course, is going downwards, but we are continuing to emit more. And kicking the can down the road is frankly not a strategy that is going to work for us anymore. We need action today to be able to even meet the implications of the climate change going forward. And that's perhaps the third and most urgent reason for us to
So there is technological evolution, and there is moral responsibility, there is a social change. All of these are drivers. May I quickly request a reaction from Mr. Kirloskar as well on this, please? Mr. Kirloskar,
I think Nitin put some of the main points across very, very nicely, especially the moral point and what happened during COVID. I would just like to add, something you said earlier regarding the economic benefits of sustainability as well. I know as a company, we started working on this about 10 or 12 years back, and the starting point was trying to get more competitive. Competitive not only in terms of quality, cost, and delivery, but competitive for the customer in terms of safety and the environment. And focusing on carbon, on water, on VOCs, reduction of all of that has certainly helped us get more competitive. Our costs have come down, very frankly. And maybe that was a starting point. We didn't realize that the competitiveness part was also helping us a lot with sustainability. The second thing we did with that is started educating all our people on what is the effect of carbon in the future, effect of the VOCs. If we had newspaper articles in Bangalore saying that why is industry using Kaveri water? It should be for the city. So how do we stop usage of all fresh water? I think some of these things, COVID certainly helped. Clean blue skies, all kinds of birds in our gardens. I think that certainly helped move ahead. But I think the economic benefits were also seen. And I think definitely besides the moral and the social benefits, the economic benefits are going to drive sustainability as we go forward.
I think that's the point that I want to delve deeper. I want to ask this question to Mr. Godrej. So far we have always thought sustainability, social responsibility, environmental awareness, all of this is more of a charitable work. It's more for addressing our moral responsibility rather than creating economic value. So do they create economic value? Have you seen examples where we've invested on sustainability initiatives and we have seen economic benefit as well?
Yes, thank you. Well, I think there's no doubt that everybody is looking at the business lens now. And as has already been mentioned, I think the business case for climate change interventions is extremely strong. In CII, we've had a green building program for 20 years. We have a green company rating system for over 10 years. And everywhere, whenever these programs are talked about, we just say that it has to make business sense. If it doesn't make business sense, it's not good for you. So yes, there is a lot of philanthropic money that works in many areas, especially on policy areas. But I think the company interventions now are really crucial. Even in our own company, since almost 10 years now, we have a program called Good and Green. And the idea is to make all our processes good from an environmental point of view and make them green in terms of their energy usage and make products which, actually are green and good for everyone. So this is the sort of business thrust. I think all companies, large companies are doing it. I think the challenge for us essentially is to take our supply chain with us. And if we can do that, then I think there will be a huge transformation.
Just a follow-on question on that. Would you say that then, the sustainability topic has moved from the, PR, CSR, brand building area into the core of strategy?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think that it is based on good business sense. I think when you provide an electrical appliance with an energy rating on it, which shows consumers how much they save, that makes business sense for everybody, for the company, for the consumer, for the country. So I think it has to be a shared responsibility of improvement and making efficiency. I think efficiency is crucial here. And, many companies have signed up to global protocols like EP100, which essentially says, every 10 years, can you halve the energy intensity of your businesses? And this is the sort of thing that I think will make a huge difference for the corporate sector and for all stakeholders. And this is the crucial part.
Right. So whatever you do should make business sense as long as you ensure that you address the twin objectives of caring for the environment, society, and also making economic value for the business.
Yeah. And also because you want to take all stakeholders with you, including employees, everyone should feel pride in what is being done from not only a business point of view, but also from a sustainability and environment point of view.
Right, and take all stakeholders along with you in doing so. So now I want to switch to the customer side of things. We have the veteran from consumer industry, Mr. Vaidyanathan here. So a couple of stats, sir, that we've observed. IBM has a research wing called IBM Institute of Business Value. They do a lot of primary research and market studies and things like that. So they surveyed close to 19,000 consumers and across 28 countries. And we came up with a research paper called the Purpose-Driven Consumers. So consumers increasingly are seeking purpose, beyond products. They're putting purpose over products. So what we found is 62% of consumers are willing to change their purchasing habits to help reduce negative, social and environmental impact. And 82% of consumers would choose more environmental friendly transportation, even if it costs more. And when it comes to their daily habits, 72% carry reusable shopping bags. And I think that proportion in India is even more, right? I don't know which grocery shop, at least in modern retail, we get plastic bags, right? So all of us have adopted that very well. And 62% saw it. And the millennials, the adoption of this is very, very high. And millennials are expecting the consumer product companies and retailers to be more responsible, and they are able to switch brands. So what's your reaction on this? Are we observing this trend in India? Are we seeing consumers switching brands, coming to preferring certain retailers, certain channels for sustainability?
Absolutely. Actually, the consumers are expecting, let me step back, right? Today, we serve 5 billion consumers on a daily basis. Okay, our brands touch 5 billion consumers on a daily basis, right? The consumers are essentially looking at their problems to be solved, which could mean cleaner clothes and which is also sustainable, right? So let me take an example of, detergents. The entire industry used to use phosphates. It improved the cleaning, so it gave you cleaner clothes, but phosphate residue was not good for the environment, right? So, and we knew this even before sustainability became a buzzword, right? And so back almost a decade ago, we removed phosphates from we found different agents which could give superior cleaning, but without the use of phosphates. We then went on to making the detergents compact so that you use less and therefore cause less carbon footprint in the environment. So these are examples of how we go into understanding what problems are there to solve from a consumer standpoint. And the consumer always looks at, I need the core benefit, but I also need it in a sustainable manner. And so that's why it's become integral part of our strategy. We provide products which are irresistible superiority and sustainable, right? So let me illustrate a few more examples. Today, Oral-B, for example, which is a very popular toothbrush, uses almost 80% recycled plastic in the toothbrush. Today, many of our packaging materials are anywhere upwards of 60 to 80%, which have recycled materials. We moved from using plastic to cardboard, again, because consumers have been saying, listen, why is there so much of plastic that I need to use? So you're absolutely right. The consumers are asking for no compromise on their product performance, but it has to be good for them and it has to be good for the environment as well.
So you've seen impact of this on business results after all these changes, eliminating phosphates and recycled plastics and circular economy. And
absolutely. I'll give you another example, right? One of the things that we found was on detergents, especially washing machine households, most people have the washing machine either at the wash cycle, either at 30 or 60 degrees, right? And if you were to take that down to 0, which means you don't need heating in the wash cycle, you can reduce a substantial amount of carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So we introduced, products which can work as well and in fact actually deliver superior cleaning even in a cold water cycle, right? And that's obviously the business results have been very, very strong, okay, globally for us. And of course, the consumers also realize, that it's better to use for all purposes. First is, of course, for cleaning, it's better to use cold water, but more importantly, for energy consumption, for reducing carbon footprint, it's important to use cold water as well.
so I think that's a good segue into how we can make an impact through manufacturing. And, we have two eminent panelists who represent manufacturing industry in a big way, Mr. Kirloskar and Mr. Godrej. So I want to come to Mr. Kirloskar first, because you have a hard stop in a few minutes. So how can we influence sustainability through manufacturing process? How is the situation in India? Are we moving into manufacturing processes which are, emitting less, polluting less, and using less resources like water and electricity? So how is the evolution, sir?
So one of the actions we took was educating our entire stakeholders, especially starting with the factory team members and staff, on what is the effect of carbon on their families, on the future, and what each one can do about it. We used our same Kaizen principles, that is continuous improvement principles, which we use for improving quality and productivity, for improving the sustainability or the electricity and things like that. Which has resulted not only big engineering processes which require heavy investment to be changed. For example, in a press line, going from 3 presses to 2 presses and redesign of tools, so you use almost 25% less energy in the steel pressing process. But also we've gone into what we say low energy automation as opposed to low cost of automation, where we use gravity and weights as the primary driver of movement. This as well as and pushing individual innovation to say that let's reduce at every single exit point of electricity or water. How do we stop it? Result of it is we have stopped using all fresh water. It's only recycling and rainwater harvesting, and that includes a water-based paint shop, which uses only water for painting. So we've stopped using fresh water in spite of that. And we have reduced our electricity consumption tremendously. So we are able to run our entire operation on renewable power. But I think it's pushing, its education is very, very key to get the manufacturing change. Education on how to innovate, education on the effect of carbon, so you internalize it and you change your behavior towards switching on a light, or as the lady Rana said initially, we come here into a 5-star hotel and we are all consuming more and more carbon. So I think there's an issue of behavior change, education, behavior change, and continuous improvement, aware of what's happening, and the ability of the management to support it and to invest wherever is necessary. Manufacturing will change in India. It reduces the cost. All this, of course, like I said, reduces the cost, and it's making us more competitive.
So it's an interesting point. You're saying you're re-engineering your processes, not just with value engineering and cost reduction in mind, but also with environment in mind. So you get a twin benefit through the re-engineering process of business process, and you're saying mindset change and education awareness building are the key actions that we as leaders need to take. So if I may ask the same question, Mr. Godrej, is it in the same lines?
Yes, thank you. Well, manufacturing actually starts with the design of the product. And I think that's the crucial part. I think all products that are being manufactured need to first be redesigned with the view to use less raw materials, less processed materials, less processed waste, less water, less energy, but still have all the consumer insights that you need to make a top quality product. So I think, we must remember that if the design of the product is already inefficient, you're not going to be able to get the benefit of a really efficient, low energy, low water, low resource design. That's the beginning. And I think that there needs a complete transformation, in the way that we look at design in India. I think everywhere in the world today, it is design that is leading innovation and sustainability. And I think this is really important. The second thing is that once you have, a really good designed product, you must, and the good process to make it, you must then, focus exactly what Vikram was saying, focus on making it clear to all our stakeholders why you're doing certain things. You have an energy target, you have a water target. And, this is a transformational opportunity. Very recently, a couple of years ago, there was something called a global cooling prize. And the prize was to make an air conditioner that uses 1/5 the energy that a room air conditioner would use today. And, all those who participated and the finalists all actually came very, very close to them. And it was, again, innovation, design innovation of how do you transform the basic cooling in a product like an air conditioner to use a multitude of technologies, not just one, and also to use software, to use artificial intelligence, to use all the tools that are available today to make an efficient product and to run an efficient product. And so this is, I think, the real challenge for everybody. Now, as I mentioned earlier, for instance, we have signed up for P100, which basically says that, okay, over the last 10 years, we reduced our energy consumption to half of what it was. And in the next 10 years, we again want to halve it. I mean, these are the types of programs that if everybody starts doing, and that major companies educate their supply chain. We all, if you know about scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions, I think everybody knows very well that the majority of emissions are in scope 3, where you say, I don't have any influence. But actually, if you work with your suppliers, your transporters, and everybody, there is a huge opportunity to reduce scope 3 emissions. And this is what businesses should do. They should make sure that their entire supply chain works very closely with them in transformation. So whether it's energy, it's water, it's product, and huge partnerships can happen for improvement. And this is what I would recommend.
So you have to design for it, you have to re-engineer your business processes, and you have to educate people, and you have to bring in the right kind of partnerships. Well said, sir. I just want to switch to a different aspect of sustainability. Sustainability is not just about environment; it's also about, in the social aspects like inclusion, diversity, and employee relations, human relations, employee experience, all of this. So, may I ask this question to Ms. Reddy? What is your views? How is the focus on health and wellness, diversity and inclusion, and various other social initiatives driving employee and consumer experience also help you drive your business growth, ma'am?
Thank you for that. We're a very employee-driven organization. Before I say too much, I wanted to actually thank Kavya. She spoke about wearing handlooms. And I think that was amazing because, me, just personally, I support weavers, not for any other reason, but because a lot of it is a dying art. We have 287 different handloom, handicraft, apparel related products in the country. And I think all of us have this responsibility towards, just sustaining and nurturing that culture. So I make it a point wherever I go and speak, wherever in the world, I will wear a made in India handloom sari. And this is a very personal thing, but because Kavya said it, I just wanted to mention it and say thank you to her. Having said that, I think, diversity and inclusion in our industry it's almost like a given because 70% of our workforce are actually women. It so happens that, in healthcare, you need them all over the world. That's the way it is. So I think it answers that. But there is a huge responsibility for us within within the system where we operate, and definitely globally. And just, small bits of data for us. Obesity costs in India is 2.8 lakh crores. The disease related to obesity is costing us that much, which is probably about 1% of, our GDP, because with obesity comes all other ailments. You start with diabetes, it goes to hypertension, so on and so forth. I'm flagging this because then the health and wellness, the societal impact of staying well and staying healthy has just huge impact, whether it's within our own system or within, all industrialists, all industries, people who are not employed. So I think it's become very responsible. Very important for us as responsible citizens to talk about health and wellness, and we should do it in whichever way we can. And I think COVID taught us that, COVID kind of made us realize that our personal health, health of our families, health of our employees, health of people who we can make an impact on is very important. So my request is that, when we're talking about SDG goals, health has to be, the core of everything which we say. Having said that, I'm not going away from the fact that, the environment, clean air is very important. And again, just by, I've been reading a lot on dirty air because we are doing research to see that how does unclean air impact disease, the disease burden. And we know that, the respiratory ailments, again, are a huge burden on society. And when there is a health burden on society, there's an economic impact. So, by dealing with this, we're actually trying to see that there's a lesser of an economic burden, whether it's on families or whether it's on governments, so on and so forth. 6.6% of China's GDP is actually the cost of dirty air. 5.4% in India and 3% in US. So, when we are talking about the vehicles, or we're talking about, industrial pollution, the dirty air is costing a lot to other governments or societies. So I just wanted to flag that. What are we doing in our organization? Our chairman being a doctor, has very clearly said that on a certain day after 12 months, if you've not had your health check for our employees and their spouses, they don't get paid. So, everybody, it's mandated that they go through a health check. Why it's done is that, we all know that if you catch disease early, then you can actually cure it, whether it's, cardiac, diabetes, cancer. But what it does is that it really brings about a very happy environment. The people know that they need to eat right, they need to exercise, they need to meditate, they need to do yoga. And when they do that, it impacts our customer. Because, when you have a smiling and a healthier employee, then the way they handle our customers is so much better. And I think that, to me, that is directly proportional. And so as an institution, we are very, very conscious of the fact that, we insist, we mandate that people look after their health. And we now have data to show that one is that overall healthcare costs have actually come down because we've had their employees have their health checks. So this is one of the things which, we are doing as an organization. The second thing is that, all of us come from some area of society or the other. So what we did is, from where my father comes, which is a village in Andhra Pradesh, we took 100,000 of our population and said that, can we make a health impact? So this has been going on for almost 7 years, just teaching them about eating habits, about exercise, about prevention of alcohol and tobacco chewing. And there is data to show that, their health in this, and of course, nutrition and safe deliveries. There's data to show that, the healthcare indices has gone up, and which means that the spend has gone down. So that's the kind of impact which is data driven and scientific, which is available. There's another area which I'm very excited about. We spoke about electricity consumption, and we spoke about clean buildings and how we must be responsible. But we realized that all the equipment, medical equipment, actually guzzles a lot of power. So working with large companies globally, which, manufacture these very high-end scanners or radiation equipment, and trying to talk to them about, can they come up in their R&D labs about less power consumption on this equipment. So today it's work in progress, but I know that 2 years down the road, we will have multiple scanners which actually, take up less energy consumption. And I think that has been very exciting. These were some of the things we're doing. And I think for far too long, we've looked at a company and company's performance through a very narrow lens of their financial performance. But I think now the triple bottom line, which is financial, the operational sustainability, and of course the social and community welfare. I think all this has now been baked into, good governance into the company's DNA. And that is really showing great impact. And again, it's good business practice also, because, when you take care of the health, you're spending less. If you take care of your building, you're spending less on power. If you, work with R&D and try and see better products, then again, it has an economic impact. So I think these are just a few data points which we have.
So thank you for drawing our attention to health. And, the cost of health is an interesting point of view that we often discount. We don't even take into consideration. It's an interesting aspect, and great to see that you're trying to drive the electricity consumption reduction also, in an industry such as healthcare. Now, I have one last question because this is a topic that we can be discussing for a very long time. There are lots of perspectives, and in this panel, we have diverse viewpoints. But in the interest of time, there's one last question I would like to ask, Nitin again. In an industry where there is heavy carbon, which is, perceived to be heavy carbon, maybe you can tell us and correct us if it is any different. How do you drive, climate impact? Climate impact is one of the important aspects of SDG, right, and sustainability. The pollution and carbon and GHGs and global warming. So how do you address an industry such as yours?
Thanks. It's a great question, and maybe also gives me a chance to reflect on some of the great comments that were made by my fellow panelists that were there, because I think what you see is it begins very much with the governance side, and in terms of boards and leaders taking accountability and responsibility for actually making the impact and setting goals and targets for themselves. You see, for ourselves, for example, we have clearly stated not only net zero targets, but we have annual sustainability and emission reduction targets, which are linked to executive pay and part of the entire structure of the company. And we have backed that up also in terms of transparency, in terms of what we report and what we communicate, as well as seeking shareholder approval for our strategic plans on carbon emission reduction, which is actually where unique in its own sort of right to come back and take it to that sort of level going forward. So it starts in my mind in governance, and I think the reality is that if you ask many of us, having set targets and commitments and linked it very much to annual and compensation and bonuses, do we know for sure exactly how we will deliver every single last bit of that target? I think the answer is no. But it's about being very clear that we will go after it and make that commitment as corporates going forward. From that point, I think there's three different areas that get covered very quickly. One is just in terms of what you do in your own activity and your own operations. Then there is the aspect of customers, and then what was brought up very clearly is the aspect of the supply chain. And in our sort of business, we were emitting about 1.8 gigatons in 2016. In context, that's about the size of all industrial activity in India. But that includes for us Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3. And Scope 3 for us is 88%, as Mr. Godrej was saying, of emissions. So it's a massive amount that's there. But we begin with our own operations, which is the 12%, and very much mass electrification in terms of how we actually change what we do, process changes in design innovation in terms of how we integrate it. I think there was a number of comments that were made about as you transition, you have to transition with keeping all 17 SDGs in mind, which means that what comes out should not have the unintended consequences of being worse. And that requires tremendous amount of innovation in how we think about it. And then we take a look at alternatives. We talked about plastics. We are processing plastics, bio alternatives, and taking a look at generating energy from other sources. And that was our Scope 1, Scope 2. But if I took to Scope 3 and customers, this is about introducing a range of different alternatives in the marketplace, giving customers and consumers flexibility and choice to express their preferences, much as you came back and said, I forgot the exact number, but 70-80% of people felt the desire to express themselves and make their choices, but we have not yet been able to enable that choice through our customer base, which is the introduction of new products and alternatives. And lastly, we have over 10 to 15,000 suppliers across the world. For example, we are one of the largest buyers of steel, and it is about setting standards for what our expectations are for what our supply base will come and do with us. And we are increasingly clear with our suppliers that to do business with Shell, you also must be on the sustainability pathways and be able to demonstrate that to ourselves. And I think there's probably a lot more, but I'll pause there in the interest of time.
Right. No, I think it's a very clear message that it starts right at the top. Incentivize sustainability goals and engage everybody. It's a supply chain game rather than one person playing a part. This is a collective responsibility. There's one thing that all of you mentioned, which is coming out very clearly, that it's about impacting a behavior change. It's about inculcating the right kind of practices in our people. And it is also about impacting the partners, the ecosystem, and so on. So if I were to just take one quick, we have 2 minutes left, quick reaction on what's that one thing that leaders will have to do, to effect. And you kind of, in a way, touched upon that, Nitin, that we have to, impact through the right, by inculcating the right kind of behaviors, by incentivizing the right set of practices. But if I were to go to Mr. Vaidyanathan and ask him, What leaders will have to do to bring this mindset change?
One is intentionality, declare the targets, like we talked about. Second is bring the culture in the organization, that because this one has to go through the entire organization when you have to get sustainability being taught, being practiced by the entire organization. Third is build an alliance because you can't solve the issue at hand just by yourself. I think getting manufacturers, getting stakeholders to partner can help a lot. I'll give you an example. I mean, we're part of what we call as an alliance to end plastic waste. I think Shell is also part of that. Today, just in a year's time, we've been able to, one, reduce 25,000 metric tons of plastic. Two is repurpose another 25,000 metric tons of plastic. Small step, yes, but in the right direction. And now we have 30 players on this alliance. Imagine what can happen when you have more and with a greater intentionality. So, yeah.
Right. No, so the right intention is the answer, and
Absolutely.
technology has to enable it, right?
Absolutely.
So the Alliance to End Plastic Waste is enabled by a technology. Proud to say that it's enabled by IBM. Sir, Mr. Godrej, your last words on this?
On net zero.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think both Nitin and Mr. Vaidyanathan have really spoken very well on this. But I would add one point, which is, yes, boardrooms and corporate leaders, etc., do have a huge responsibility to set the direction. But after that, I think it has to be the responsibility of every single person in the organization, because we know that transformation of this type, like net zero, requires every single person to do their bit. And this is, I think, going to be the most crucial part, because, there's skepticism that, well, if net zero is 50 years out, why do we need to start today? But I think that's all the more reason to start today, because it's a huge problem that has to be, this transformation will only happen if all corporate leaders and every employee in the company work towards that goal. And then only will we be able to achieve it. It's a massive task. But I think you have to start somewhere. So you have to start, with all the things that we talked about doing, but move rapidly to corporate-wide transformation of organizations and industries. I think, companies don't work in isolation. They work in an industry framework. And all industry frameworks, every car manufacturer, every pharmaceutical product manufacturer, have to transform for us to be able to achieve net zero by 2070. And that's what we have to start. We have to start it now. I think that's very essential.
Well, when we discuss a topic of this nature, the time flies, and we are totally out of time. But this is something that we can be talking for, many more hours, but unfortunately have to wind up here. But the interesting takeaways are that the tone starts light at the leadership level. It's an ecosystem play. It's about re-engineering your business processes, your manufacturing, and designing for achieving sustainability objectives along with profitability. And it's also about education and training and building awareness. That's where leaders have a big role to play. Thank you very much, my fellow panelists. It's fantastic discussion. And thank you for your time. Do we have time for audience questions now? Unfortunately not. Probably we will respond through the app or the offline questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.